And let's finish this very long 8th chapter of Silver on the Tree, which is called Three from the Track. The Drew children have gone back in time and have witnessed a confrontation with a sawyer at a boatyard who has been accused of doing the bidding of the dark by building boats that deliberately sink. In the scuffle that happened, Simon was knocked into the water and was saved by none other than Merriman. He pressed one hand on Simon's shoulder and glanced up at Jane, beckoning her closer. Then he stood up. Jane put a diffident arm round Simon's shoulder to help as he turned to watch. John Rowlands was standing close by on the beach, dripping from head and clothes. Jane said in Simon's ear, "He jumped in the sea after you, trying to reach you when—" Her voice seemed to dry into nothing. She swallowed. "When Great-Uncle Mary just came up out of nowhere." Merriman loomed before them, angular in his wetness, tall as a tree. Before him, on the beach, the men of the shipyard stood motionless in a group, with two grey-whiskered captains, angry and silent, nearby. Caradog Lewis stood in the midst of the shipwrights, red hair gleaming. He was staring at Merriman, transfixed, like some animal caught in mid-stride by an angry badger or fox. And the anger in Merriman's eyes as he looked at the red-haired man was of such depth that both Simon and Jane, watching, shrank from it. Caradog Lewis moved slowly back, cringing, seeking escape. Then Merriman reached out one arm, with the first finger stiff, pointing, and the man froze, pinned into stillness once more. "Go," Merriman said, softly in his deep voice, like black velvet. "Go, you have sold yourself to the dark, back from this bright Aberduffy of the river to Dinas Madre, where you came from. Go back to where the dark lurks in the hills round Cara Idris, in the realm of the Grey King, where others wait in black hope like yourself. But remember that since you have failed in this attempt here, your masters now will have no time for you. So beware after this, in years to come, that you keep your sons and your daughters and the sons of your daughters away from any trifling with the dark, for the dark, in its vengefulness, will surely destroy any of them that it can take into its power." Without a word, Caradog Lewis turned and walked away over the crackling grey slate, up the rough steps and away along the road. Until they could no longer see him. Merriman looked at Simon and Jane, and he turned toward the sea, past the silent men in the shipyard huts, and the half-built ship, and in a strange, gentle gesture, he opened his arms wide, like a man stretched on waking, looking up at the sky, and out of nowhere a seagull came swooping past, low over the water, harshly crying. Their eyes followed, and when it rose again, out of sight, suddenly they found that they were dressed once more in jeans and shirts of their own time, standing on a narrow, slaty beach, a few feet below the level of the iron-railed pavement, alone with John Rowlands and Merriman. In Simon's right hand was a piece of flat slate. His first finger curled round it, as if for throwing. He looked down at it, shrugged, bent, and skimmed it over the surface of the water. It bounced impressively in a long skipping trail. 8, Simon said. "You always win," said Jane. Their clothes were dry, only Jane's hair was damp still from the rains of the morning. There was nothing to show that Simon, Merriman, and John Rowlands had ever been in the sea. Jane peeped at John Rowlands as he stood there, blinking in perplexity, and she knew that he did not remember anything. He looked about, dazed. Then he caught sight of Merriman and became very still. He stared at him for a long moment. "Darrow," he said at last huskily, "what is this? You, I have never forgotten you from when I was a boy. Do you remember? It is you. Or is it you?" Jane and Simon stood listening, puzzled. "You were Will's age, then," said Merriman, looking at him with a half-smile. "Up on your mountain, and you saw me. Riding." John Rowlands said slowly, "Riding on the wind." "Riding on the wind. I wondered after that if you would remember. There was no harm in it if you did. Who would have believed you? But I put it into your mind that you had dreamed it, to leave you at rest." "And indeed I did think that I had dreamed it, until this moment. that I see the same face again, unchanged after so long, and wonder why it is here." John Rowlands turned his head and looked at Simon and Jane. "This is Will's master, is it not? And known to you as well?" Simon said automatically, "Great-uncle Mary." John Rowland's voice rose incredulous. "Your great-uncle?" "A name," Merriman said, his eyes clouded. He looked away over the estuary at the sea. "I must go. Will needs me, as the dark knew, Simon, when I caught you in peril in a time from which only I could ransom you by leaving the place where I was."
"Are they all right?" Simon said.
"They will be, if all goes well."
Jane said anxiously, "What can we do?"
"Beyond the beach at sunrise. Your beach," Merriman said. He looked at her with an odd, strained smile and pointed up the road. "And take your small brother home to tea." Turning, they saw Barney's yellow-haired figure prancing toward them down the road, with Bloodwind Rowlands in his wake. And when they turned back again to the beach and the sea, Merriman was not there. And that is the end of Chapter 8 and the end of Part 2.